back to the Countertop podcast. This is going to be a podcast where we dive into topics that we bring to the table each week. My name's Brandon, that's Tanner, that's Ray, and we will go through and kind of bring our topics. Anything we want to bring up from last week's combo that we had? Podcast? Housekeeping?
Yeah, just briefly, we talked about months ago now, it seems, the NVIDIA shortage of graphics cards. They just released a tweet today, I believe it was, or yesterday, that said their global supply chain has been greatly impacted by COVID-19 and that all of their graphics cards and offerings are affected, and that users should just rely on the systems that give them automated inputs. But really, there was a whole hoopla about a shitty launch, a lot of, people buying, stock levels are still low, and they basically say we're shipping them out physically as fast as we can produce them. So it's kind of a nice little tweet.
To kind of add to that too, I think Xbox and PS5 are feeling that same thing. It'll be interesting going into the Christmas holiday to see if they release more, because that's normally how they have this big influx all of a sudden, and then you start seeing them come out for Christmas. But seems like they're having the same issues there on that launch, kind of being a poor launch. I know Walmart, I was actually reading an article, they got hit really hard because they did online only this year.
Yep.
And what ended up happening was a bunch of bots and were crashing the Walmart site and all of that. So definitely interesting.
Have we seen that with cell phones or laptops, or is it pretty much only peripherals that we know in the gaming industry as well as consoles?
I think it's really the gaming industry. We'll see. I know iPhone's coming out with a new launch here soon.
Yeah, it's all the high volume stuff that seems to be getting affected because of it. I think it is affecting everything, but because of the abundance of different models and stuff of laptops and other generic tech, I don't think you're seeing as many shortages. Like you said, maybe MacBooks and some of the higher end Windows-based stuff might be seeing some shortages, but I just think overall availability of that stuff makes it easier to come by.
Yeah. So that was kind of housekeeping. Before we jump into the topic, we appreciate you guys coming in to listen. Make sure you're following us: Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. We'll continue to kind of post all over, so make sure you follow us. First, I'll jump in because I just found an interesting article today, more that I thought I'd share with you guys because I don't think you guys are aware of this. Everyone knows the Target box stores, right?
Yep.
You guys ever shopped in those?
Oh, Target?
Target.
Oh, Target.
Oh, Target.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
So I didn't know if you guys knew this, but Target actually has a state-of-art forensics lab that catches more than just shoplifters. So they actually have a forensics lab, and it's basically they have 400 operations worldwide. And I just stumbled upon this article because it basically talks about how they've actually helped on some of these cases. Back in, I think it was like 2010, Target's forensic analysis, Jake Steinhorn, even testified during the trial of Mahad Hassan Ali, who was convicted of killing 3 men last year, or that year, in a market in Minneapolis. So I kind of found it just that fascinating because I had no idea that this even existed. Yes.
Question. What percentage of the markup am I paying at Target to pay for a forensics lab?
Yeah.
What the hell?
It's actually really.
What type of forensics are they using? Hold up.
Well, supposedly it's state of the art, and this is an older article posted in 2011, but it's still operational as of today. This actually kind of started off because it was kind of interesting because they do ask in this article is like, do you guys expect special treatment from Minneapolis for this? But they said no. This is just for us supporting our community and our businesses in those communities.
Okay.
But they actually kind of first started off with Minneapolis by donating $300,000 for cameras for what they call the downtown. What ended up happening was calling a safe zone, putting up 30 cameras in this dangerous area in Minneapolis to help kind of bring the community back.
So interesting. Corporate.target.com has a forensic services link that has a PDF that I was able to quickly pull up after you brought this up.
Perfect. Not bullshit.
First opened in 2003, the Target Forensic Services Laboratory maintains two facilities, one in Minneapolis and one in Las Vegas. They offer services such as latent print analysis for physical evidence processing on physical items touched by suspects, merchandise or merchandise packaging, video analysis, imaging clarification, identification of characteristics, imaging comparisons, and advanced examinations for digital video, TVS, DVR, cell phones, etc., along with analog videos. And then lastly, audio clarification, damaged media repair, digital audio, voicemail surveillance recording, smartphone recording, memos, etc., and analog audio. The Target Forensics Services Laboratory examined evidence related to a wide spread of cases, including safety and/or security, organized retail crime (ORC), single incidents involving significant loss of target merchandise, and then violent felony or specific circumstances case requested by U.S. law enforcement. To you.
So I just found this interesting because it kind of just goes into the article as well that they've helped out the police department with if their forensic labs are overwhelmed, those type of situations, as well as some of the cases that happen at Target. They try to help, provide the supplies that need to be done, to let them do their job. So it's kind of interesting. One, because I had never thought I couldn't even make that up that they had that. But I do find it interesting and kind of in today's world with the Black Lives Matter movement and the separation of defunding the police and those types of things. I think this kind of stems into a broader picture of corporations supporting local communities, maybe not just police departments, but local communities as well. Do they have, and I'm going to word this poorly, but should they be doing that? Should, with these movements as well, should they not be doing that? If this was in mainstream right now, would they be trying to cancel Target with some of the movements that have happened and those type of things that I think stem into a bigger picture of who's helping who?
I'm sure they help out where needed, but I don't know if people would go as far as trying to cancel Target because at the root of this, I believe it's more of just a loss prevention technique than it is actually trying to assist police.
Yeah, 100%.
I would agree with you there. Reading through this PDF, I think tertiary benefit might be towards law enforcement, but primary benefit, secondary benefit is for loss prevention, as you were talking about. Yeah, it's really interesting because I had no idea before you brought it up, Brandon. Like literally, but I would have to think, and I'm curious, what other type of entities on the private sector do have, and they have this seal at the bottom of the PDF that says an ASCLD lab accreditation. And so they obviously have a standardized accreditation form that exists for these private entities that have forensics labs. And I'm wondering, maybe now, just to what extent do private entities have forensic labs that directly speak with? Because, we talked about cell phone unlockings and other things with iPhones. Is that from an Apple forensic lab, or is that just...
Well, I'm sure when you get into some of these tech companies, the door gets open even larger to these forensic, IT facilities and those type of things, which I'm sure, if we want to touch on it now, we can, or possibly maybe housekeeping next week, bring it up and what we find.
Digital forensics is a thing. It's definitely a modern aspect of it, but you want to get into the tech side, I'm sure there's a lot of that. But I know there's also privatized traditional forensics labs because I have seen instances where...
Oh my god, I googled it in the US, in the USA. Ben Shapiro's lab for molecular evolution, ancient DNA, viruses, and pathogenetics.
What?
Ben Shapiro has his own lab?
Yes, he does.
Interesting.
Wow.
Oh my god.
How easy is it to get lab accreditation?
I don't fucking know, man. That's funny. Hold on.
That's so strange.
Ben Shapiro and Richard Green.
Is that just a business investment?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not prepared to talk about it. It's just a Google. It's just a Google search for Ben Shapiro's chip. Oh man, that's hysterical.
Is Shapiro's wife is in the medical field, right?
I don't know.
I believe so.
But all I know is Ben Shapiro's wife is dry.
Yeah. From his own mouth. So, but yeah, you know, you look at his wiki and everything is author, columnist, host, speaker. There's nothing at all related to any kind of need for any kind of lab.
I'm wondering if it's a business investment that he got his name stuck on top of. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail. I just did a Google search to try and help with the conversation, and I ended up with that.
That's too funny. Well, no, maybe we can look some up and bring it into housekeeping next week, what we found. But I do think it's interesting in that private sector of, you know, what's out that you don't know of and who's, you know, like I said, Target. I know there's a benefit to them, but at the same time, you don't think of that as, you know, what Target. You think they would take a loss over building a forensics lab to deal with people versus going, yeah, let me get my $10 back for that thing they stole.
Right. No, it's a great topic.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move it on. I know, Ray, you said you had a topic if you want to jump into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty light. I just found an interesting article the other day. It's based out of Australia, Northern Australia. I guess Alice Springs Airport in Northern Australia. This says they have noticed an increase in illegal drone flights as a result of COVID grounding a large fleet of aircraft at the airport. They said it makes for interesting but illegal and dangerous aerial photos. So I guess they have had an outbreak of private drones flying over this airfield, just taking pictures of the grounded flights because, you know, that's not something you see often. There's not a lot of people traveling right now, and so people want video or photo of these large areas of just parked planes. But I thought it was interesting because I wonder how much of this stems from people just being bored in COVID in lockdown and having drones and just wanting to get out and take pictures of stuff, and how much of it is an actual security threat, because it's technically a no-fly zone over the airport, even if they're not operating. This article says
still some planes operating.
Yeah, I'm sure there's still some, and I don't know how far from the main airstrips and stuff like that. There's a photo in the article that shows this field of planes, and it doesn't look like it's anywhere near an airstrip, so it's technically no-fly space, but I don't think they're doing anything that's actually going to operationally affect any type of commercial aircraft taking off and landing there. But they've said already this year, staff has personally noticed around 50 drones coming in and out, taking pictures of that. And that's just what they've noticed. That's not what's been there. But the other thing that surprised me is they monitor social media for these pictures, and anyone that's caught that they can prove took the photo with a drone is faced with fines up to $11,000 or 2 years in jail.
Jeez. Well, that's 11,000 US Australian dollars, or dollarinos, as they call it. So it's about 10 cents.
Yeah.
No, no, you know, so it's super interesting. I do have a background in UAV type inspection licensing from the FAA here. And those who are involved in the drone industry do take it really seriously. Some of those guys are like, you know, they do pre-flight checkoffs like they're flying an A-10 Warthog to do some combat missions. And I mean, bless their hearts, fine, whatever, I get it. But I 100% can back you on that says people who have non-licensed drone operations inside of a regulated airspace should be liable for damages and or fines.
Yeah. Yeah,
no
absolutely.
question or contest.
I don't disagree with that. I just wonder how many people are buying drones, especially the cheaper they get, and not looking into legalities of this at all. I know
100%.
a lot of countries are starting to come down on this a lot. Canada's one of them. And, a lot of those guys might take it seriously and have pre-flight checklists, but there's also a lot of countries now that with their licensing that they give out to drone operators, they have to do that kind of thing. It's just like flying an aircraft in the eyes of some of these operations permits and stuff like that. So it's just interesting where, this is a somewhat rapid transition of drones becoming widely available to their, use, widespread use these days. And I know there's a lot of people out there buying these little tiny drones and cheap drones
Do you
and not
remember
looking
the
up
Animal House?
legalities. And
Do you remember Animal House?
yeah,
Yeah, you remember the scene with the ladder?
yeah,
Replace it with drones. That's where we're at now.
yep.
That exists. Yeah, 100%. Is it the responsibility of the manufacturer of the drones to inform potential buyers of legalities that no. Again,
and I'm sure some of that though is a disclaimer on the login of the app that they're having to use. I'm sure it's posted there because they know if they're not also trying to help solve the problem that they're going to get somehow pulled.
yeah, but they're not on the hook for it by any means.
But there's got to be a disclaimer as soon as you log into the app saying,
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there is.
Yeah.
But that's the same with any kind of video equipment because it is regulated in restricted areas. Most manufacturers will all have some kind of generic liability statement saying you need to check with local laws and regulations before you operate any of this equipment. Especially with radio stuff. I mean, you can make the same argument for small personal radios over whatever the cutoff is, like 5 kilowatts or I don't know what
drones mostly go off line of sight.
Yeah,
line of sight, and it's specifically with obstructions. So we know I work in the renewable energy field where wind towers, we have people who fly drones throughout our facilities, and metal structures impede the radio frequencies of hand controllers as they're going through, and both the first person radio feeds and the video as well as the controls. And there's lots of white papers that exist on that. The point being that yes, ultimately it is the user's responsibility to not be a douche.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. I do see as they become more widely used, or cost even comes down further and further, there's no stopping this kind of idiotic behavior, especially in these areas. And even there's certain areas that you're not supposed to fly. Let's get away from the airports, but other areas that you're not supposed to fly, certain businesses,
government buildings,
those that I think is maybe not as blatantly you're not
obvious.
Supposed to do it. Yeah. Whereas airfield, you would think someone would realize this could get sucked up. You could.
Yeah, public safety, one thing, right? But then personal right to privacy. That's the word I'm looking for.
Exactly. 100%.
And to kind of double back to the whole manufacturer liability thing, I just remembered DJI, I don't know what model it is, but their newest lightweight model is kind of developed to skirt some of those laws around permitting and licensing. So even though they have the disclaimers, at what point do you criticize a manufacturer for
is that specifically the Mini 2?
I believe so. I know there's one specific model, it's like 2 grams under the cutoff for a permit in a lot of countries. So, at what point do you criticize DJI for doing something like that, specifically looking to get around laws of people not having to get licensed before they operate?
Does the government come into play as well of not letting them have
less than 249 grand?
Yep.
Yeah, to sell that product, you're removing my clientele because they're not going to buy this anymore, knowing they have to get a permit. So it's it goes
two-sided.
both ways there. Yeah.
And I would think that on the adverse side of it, if you're talking about public safety in terms of flights and the requirements for turbines to absorb both birds and drones, then yes, you should, in addition to try and control the private sector's use of drones and the total, height, weight of their, you do have to start to address the turbine structures and whether or not they could impede the entry of a drone into their turbine system prior to it failing. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not one-sided. But that Mini 2 is pretty dope.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
All the
great.
drones are pretty dope.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's the weird part about drones is that they're affording people the opportunity to share what they view as their life. But we already have these existing structure of internet that says, okay, what do you find that's interesting and important? Drones, I think, are really showing that from a holistic view on, like, oh, I'm a mountain bike rider and this trail is really cool. Well, why is this trail really cool? Well, I understand the geographic region on why this is important, but having a drone to capture that from such a faraway perspective allows other people who are not indigenous to this region to understand more about my total environment and why it's important.
Yeah. It also gives a lot of just interesting viewpoints of things that people wouldn't normally be able to see of their local region,
Mhm.
especially, being out here in Arizona, there's a lot of topical photos of mountains and deserts and it's all, the forests around here, all that kind of stuff
You
that
don't
you
have
wouldn't
forests in
normally be able to
Arizona.
see. Northern
I've been
Arizona,
there.
there's a few.
No.
oh,
It's rocks.
another
It's
thing-
pretty much rocks.
Just rocks and sand.
Yeah. A lot of mountains.
Another piece of this, too, is the types of advertising has changed due to drones. If it be film, if it be
Real estate,
real
especially.
estate, yeah,
Well,
some
those
family
several
members.
thousand drone LED light shows that are providing advertisements over sporting events.
Yeah, Super Bowls and all of that.
Yeah.
It's made some big changes.
Yeah. It's just interesting to see where that technology goes too. Because, I mean, you look at some of these companies outside of DJI, there's a lot of companies doing AI drones now, and they are developed for those people that like the mountain bikers and stuff like that, trying
Sure.
to show off what they do because they can just program it to follow them and it just follows them, no problem, all the time on these
Seriously,
trails.
the DJI Mini 2 is only $500 or $450.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Of course, I
Wh-
want the one that's 1,200.
Okay, I didn't look at that one, but seriously, I mean,
Yeah,
you're
no,
right.
it's become a toy that's affordable to anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
And should that toy that's affordable and provides that great paradigm shift for all these people to express what they view as important, should it be regulated by the FAA to the point where you have to have a license to operate? 100% no. You just straight up no. I don't think it does. Now, this Mini 2 likely can't reach and should not be operated within the takeoff zone of an aircraft, but outside of the takeoff zone, it's not competing. So fine, play. Right? If you're flying a drone inside of an airstrip, you deserve to be kicked in the nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those things that you should just know better.
Yeah, no, you should be kicked in the nuts. Don't go to jail. I'd take your drone away, kick you in the nuts, and let you go back home.
Yeah.
You're not a menace to society, but you're a dumbass.
Yeah.
So just stop. It's okay.
Well, that's
Like,
why
you'll
it's-
learn.
That's why it's that extreme fine. It's the
Right.
Yeah.
you'll learn.
Just
once
don't
hard.
be
Deterrent.
dumb.
Yeah.
You're not a bad person.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
don't be dumb.
Well, Tanner, we'll throw the topic to you. Let's finish this off.
Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting. Mine's going to be slightly political.
Oh no.
Sorry. But I found it really interesting that over the past several years, Fox News, under the current administration, has been kind of the go-to outlet. The past week, I've been really interested in the 100 and something tweets a day where we say now Fox News is bad under the current administration, but let's move over to Newsmax. And so the article that I saw in the Wall Street Journal, dated, how is this, November 15th, 2020, so today. Um, there is a coalition of individuals who are looking to potentially invest or otherwise take controlling ownership of Newsmax, given the recent tweet storm and changes in Fox News. And I kind of want to just kind of bring it open there that says we talked about several weeks ago echo chambers that exist between social media. And I wanted to, without explaining that in too much detail, just talk to each of you saying, does this move this ownership and or exploratory into ownership of different media outlets aid in our concerns of echo chambers, or otherwise allow, I don't know, you finish it off, you get what I'm saying.
Well, isn't this news network kind of quote unquote state owned? Is what it's been portrayed as. Is this the one?
I don't know.
That's, and when I say state owned, government owned, I should say.
Newsmax?
Yeah, I thought I saw there's a. It's been a while since Trump tweeted about some news company that to go listen to your news, but basically it was that echo chamber, but just for the government. I could be totally wrong and just blasting this news network.
It's a private equity firm that owns it, but it says they have ties to the co-chair of the Republican National Committee, stuff like that. Not directly state-owned and operated, though.
Yeah, I think the problem is, and it's a society issue. The echo chambers is a society issue, not necessarily the. And yes, we can always hope for, say, CNN or Fox or this new channel to be.
Parlor, what's up?
Yeah.
Sorry.
you hope it to always be better and to give you all the information, to give you well-rounded discussions.
Unbiased information
Yeah,
is what people are looking
but
for.
I think the more and more we go in this direction, I don't think you're getting to that point. You have to be the sole ownership of, let me go gather data. You have to get outside of the echo chamber because it's comfortable there, and so people go there. So I think it's a personal issue that you got to go explore. And I just don't see these private companies, if they want to be on the far right, if they want to be on the far left, they can be. It's just your own social duty to go outside of that.
I agree with that. I think a lot of people also don't want to put in the work. They would rather just listen to people that have similar viewpoints as them and take everything that they say as gospel. So even
which
outside
is
of the echo
super
chamber,
dangerous.
it is.
Everyone
And
agree that is dangerous.
it is becoming more and more prevalent these days, though, especially with social media. And since you brought up Parler, you've got a huge portion of conservative voices leaving Facebook and Instagram for this Parler app. And I was literally just thinking that the other day, is I don't want to jump on this bandwagon of going on to Parler to share some of my pro-gun stuff that I have an Instagram for, because I don't want to get caught up in that conservative echo chamber and only cater to that group of people. I'd rather stick it out on these other platforms and push for reform, allowing all different kinds of opinions instead of just accepting the fact that it might be a more liberal leaning platform and abandon it completely to get away from that viewpoint. That's not how anything works. Society is built on compromise, and you can't do that when you've got segregation of social medias now to bring that divide. Like it's already been an issue on Facebook since its inception, of people surrounding themselves with only like-minded people or people who share their same beliefs. You know, it all comes down to.
I mean, honestly, MySpace playlist has remained the same since 2004. But in a serious note, I don't have a Facebook because I don't want people to invite me to their farm. I don't have an interest in Parler because of echo chambers and the principle and its existence. What I'm really, I think you're right in saying that, if people critically think about something and they don't agree with what is said, the answer of a mature individual is not to run away to someone else who agrees with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I find this Wall Street Journal article enlightening, concerning, provocative, whatever you want to say, is that it is now a political play. I don't know if there's a better word to put it, but it's a political play to acquisition a media outlet based on the short-term ebbs and flows of individuals to try and target their, I don't want to say radical thoughts, but I want to say short-term thoughts.
It's just extreme current political ideologies.
This is where the environment exists. And because we're making short-term moves based on, and I'm not advocating for Facebook, fuck Facebook, I don't give a shit about them. I'm saying that if you encounter adversity as a person, and when it's encountered, you run away to someone who agrees with you, you as an individual are doing a disservice to yourself. And I think that's sad.
I mean, this network trying to be taken over or bought by pro-Trump allies, whatever you want to call it, that's what it says in the Wall Street Journal article, is 100% just built to be a propaganda machine. I know there's all kinds of people that bring up the ownership of CNN and all of the more liberal-leaning news networks, and they're the same thing. That's why people need to get away from the thinking of, I'm going to watch these one or two different news outlets, and they might be on the same side of the political spectrum, and so I'm just going to believe everything that they say. I mean, I guess maybe the thought isn't as widespread as some people might think, but I've always gone to all kinds of different news networks and independent media networks and things like that to formulate my opinion on everything that I can find on the issue, instead of just believing one or two others. And, you know, it's clear that things have become more divided over the last 15 years, especially, and I don't think people formulating a pro-Trump media network is helping that situation at all. It's just pushing for further divide, further echo chambers, and I can't remember the word that I'm thinking of. I've brought it up before, but it's that same thing of you're just surrounding people with hive mind like mentality. Yep. And it's not good. That's how you push to further divide, is by refusing to listen to the other side's opinions. And
that's why I think it's a personal, it comes down to the personal well-being of society to formulate your own opinions and absorb as much info as possible. The sad thing with media is, though, that it's also played up. It's part of a show. It's part of, you go to, let's say I like to go listen to Fox because I like how the guy speaks, or I go to CNN because I like the screen, how all of that comes into play.
Yeah.
They show more serious things on here, and the drama,
and that's how,
and all of that comes into
that's how it is now. But I mean, just look at how media has devolved over the years. There's no journalistic integrity anymore. That's a fact. I mean, look at some of these headlines that large news media outlets are posting that then have to be rescinded or changed hours later after they find more information.
Yeah, but they're only rescinded or changed in a small footnote.
Yeah.
That's the funniest shit, is that if you actually are aware of what that means, you could read through the entire article, and then at the very top it'll say edited at 12:15, but you have to go through the original text to get to the bottom that says, oh, by the way, this wasn't fucking true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely it's maddening.
People refuse to see that, and I mean, journalism is dead. There's no people are. It's pretty
okay. I would say change that slightly. Journalism is alive.
Yeah,
but the centralization of interest is also more prevalent.
Yeah,
that people instinctively, the further you get from a central reporting agency. If you look at Fox News in the, Fox 47, I don't know where the fuck that's at, but you get it. Fox, subsidiaries of local news channels are more in tune with the local mindset than a national group.
Yeah.
And I think that prevails regardless, because those individuals are more in tune with their community. And I think there's a lot of value that we should put towards community involvement, community understanding in terms of issues, development, and growth than overall on a national level where, we struggle as Americans to realize that we're so big that the typical, if you were to align our geopolitical conversation towards that of Europe, is not applicable because of the sheer vast and number of people in our nation and the unique and individual concerns that address each of us. Having lived in the Midwest, on the West Coast, East Coast, and now down south from the North, I get it. What's really impeding on your individual community deserves to be expressed on both the local scale, the national scale, and it really takes an individual, like you're saying, to look at, does my individual community needs, how does that affect the nation needs overall, and then on the global scale, how does that affect us? And what type of things are we looking at on the global scale that I'm affecting in my own community? And I think that does take multiple different sources to say that as I grew up in Illinois in this corn and soybean fields, the ocean really didn't matter. But you know what? It really does.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things. It's like I said, it's all about compromise. For the most part, the politics in New York don't affect me until they do, when it becomes a national conversation, That's why I've always been a proponent. I even especially this last election cycle, people get so caught up in what's going on at the national level and totally ignore what's going on at a local level. And there's a lot of people that go in to vote and they will vote for president, and that is it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't give a second thought about any of the local races, which arguably is what affects their day-to-day life the most, more than any national policymaker is going to. And so that
as long as states' rights are reserved. States' rights are wonderful. States should be independent. And you're right, the local elections should matter more.
That all ties into people having to look through multiple outlets to get information, especially these days when things are becoming more and more clearly divided. It's not just a conspiracy theory anymore that some media outlets are owned by certain people, and so their content is more biased towards that. There's multiple sites and sources that can prove that. So people have to take anything they read with a grain of salt. That's why I love that picture that's gone around. I don't know when it originated, but at least the last 10 years, it's spray paint on a wall that says question everything. And there's a question under it that just says why. Like that's how I've always approached any information that I'm given. I question it. I look up different sources and research it to see which side I'm going to lean on. If there's no hard evidence that's going to prove one way or the other, I'm going to go with whatever has more factual basis. That's just what it is.
And it's super okay. It's super okay to have it be, to make a decision on how it affects your life more.
Yeah.
It's not wrong to look at you, but looking at you and only listening to your side of things is where things get problematic.
Yeah.
Because I think the concept of what my favorite one is, a food desert. Up until a few years ago, I wasn't aware of what that term was and what it means.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of folks who are in the flyover states, Midwest or and out to West, generally don't know what a food desert means. And one of the political talking points, whether it be locally or nationally, is that concept of availability of services to every citizen, right? And that's not a thing that exists. And I think that those type of things, like food deserts, or, I don't know, insert any other topic, those are really good examples of why there shouldn't be an overall bias towards your media, because everyone would generally agree school shootings are bad. Everyone would agree food deserts are bad. If you learn what a food desert is, right? It's like the choices you make as a parent in trying to buy food for your kids is going to be changed whether or not you could drive to a grocery store or drive a bus or ride a bus.
Yep.
I mean, food doesn't keep for 2 hours on a bus the same as it does in my car when I drive there for 15 minutes. My food choices will be different. That's unequivocally true. Just accept it. Shut up. Now, like, those type of things are where you have to break apart other external factors that you may agree with. Like, I want freedom of choice. But you also have to acknowledge that food deserts exist. And that's where this ownership or potential buyout of a specific media is concerning to me, because I feel like although one side will be better representative, it doesn't mesh all of our problems that we all know exist and should explore, even if we disagree.
Yeah.
That's all.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. I think we'll reiterate this again is don't get settled in a echo chamber that, it's nice and cozy there, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we're approaching the end of the episode. For any final thoughts from you guys?
No, it's fun. I appreciate it. Again, I'm going to take Brandon's spot here. Go ahead and follow us, like us. Leave us a comment if you would, please, regardless of where you're at. Reach out, whether we got an Instagram. We've got a Twitter now, right?
Twitter, yep.
What's the Twitter handle?
Countertop Podcast.
Okay. We got a YouTube, which is what?
Countertop Podcast. Actually,
okay, great.
Countertop Studios, I believe.
All right, correction. Countertop Studios. Do we have an Instagram?
We do.
What's it called?
Countertop Studio.
Oh, I'm seeing a trend here. Hopefully. So,
or I'm really bad at this.
Reach out and let us know, because what's interesting is that all of us want to challenge our paradigm. I think that's been apparent throughout all of our episodes. We've been doing this a couple months, right?
Yeah.
And I think having someone suggest a counter narrative that allows us to explore and talk about would be really beneficial to not only our own personal growth, but the growth of anybody who's watching this podcast, to help us transition to the next level.
No, that's perfect.
Yep.
We'll see you guys next time.